Hi guys, this one's just going to be a quick one. Given what's just happened in the last hour really, in terms of Bitcoin, I just wanted to put a video out there, just kind of emphasizing the reason that I haven't put videos out there. I guess, look, in terms of where we are right now, nothing's really changed in the grand scheme of things. I'll come across and I'll show you first of all the more recent update in terms of trading view. So again, just come into my profile. You'll actually see the updated version. Going back to the initial call, the where we were talking about the rocket. This was actually just before this, where we were talking about the rocket, and I drew the initial roadmap. We were calling the drop. All the logic was kind of sitting there. Then obviously the rise as to why the move up could come into August, which I'll come in and show you in a second. So there's nothing really that's of any surprise right now. Okay. So again, I've covered this a million times, or it feels like a million times. The expectations was down, up, back down, up, down to the 4 level. But for me, this still feels very much like a weekly 4. Okay. Now, weekly 4 up for a weekly 5 means that we were aiming for weekly 5 would only equate to a monthly 3. Okay. So you can see all the way back from the 18th of March. There we are. Okay. Now, the roadmap itself, again, pretty much similar. Call in the top, pulling down into the shallow area, into the deep areas. This was actually the value area. This is something that we teach within Discord. There's a couple of clusters. There's a few things that give you the indication as to why it's going where it's going. And therefore, when I started looking after the events and knowing that we've come down from where we were at the the old all-time high now, I was actually calling, if you come back to the 30th of September, I was actually calling this level here as another forecasted area. Okay. And you'll actually see inside of this why. Okay. Now we come up, we tagged it, we bounced off it, we've come back to retest it. Now there's a massive cluster down around this area. I'm not going to go into too much detail there. That's exactly what we talk about within the Discord. So the longs and shorts of it is, for me, nothing really surprising, nothing really interesting. We've done what I thought we were going to do. Okay. So going back a couple of months, if I take away these charts, let's get rid of this one. Let's get rid of this one. Now, first things first, if I go all the way back to February time, okay, now I've actually got, well, even further, let's go back to January to start with, okay? So January, you can see the price on the right hand side. We were looking around 32,500. I was talking about this being accumulation at its kind of final phase. Okay. So we can see that there was a nice imbalance down around 22. We didn't actually get back down to 22, if I remember rightly on this. And therefore, there's still an imbalance down there that I'm not so much waiting on, but I can't rule it out ever really until that's actually tagged. Now, we had a wider accumulation, which I mentioned here. You can see this was on the 23rd of January. The accumulation was going to take us up, obviously, into new territory, right? That was the expectation on the move back in January, right? So I've covered that going back to the start of the year. We then come into February. Now, I've actually pressed played on this and just showing the actual image as to why. So the 28th of February, so a month on from the January call, I'd actually drawn a value area there. Now, again, TradingView doesn't allow you to edit anything, so you can kind of come back and check my profile on this particular post and actually see this was called institutional Bitcoin. Now, the reason and the logic for this was, again, something that we teach within Discord. But ultimately, I was looking for the value area and the price to pull back the value area. So when I looked at the rocket call, this was all part of that assumption. Now, the rocket call was made in March. We then drew a roadmap towards the end of March, and that roadmap showed the journey down to 4. So coming back to the actual roadmap, you'll see that this was one of the reasons that I was calling for this to be the low. Okay. Now, skip forward a few months, and I actually put out the post again in Discord explaining why, for me, the interesting element was not really to trade the move up route. I would have liked to have got it if I thought there was more upside potential. But as I've just covered, there was a 19k to 22k imbalance area that I'm still a little bit uncomfortable with, to be honest. We've got a move from the low, which is where this 5 is right at the very bottom. We had a 1 and a 2 up, a 3. Now on the top left-hand side, you'll see this was the 24th of August. On the 24th of August, I was expecting the move to come down from around the 50, pull back, and then up we go. Okay. Now, again, nothing really surprising in that move there. I'll come back to the actual chart, and you'll actually see that in this particular move, you'll see that from the 24th of August, so I'm just going to come back to where we all the way here. This was around 24th of August. So this was actually the area I was looking at. We had the pullback, which was this, and then we moved up. Okay, so I'll just flick this back on so you can see again. So from the August side, you'll actually see I was expecting the push down to then shoot up. Okay, but if you take a full step back out, okay, now this is where, again, it's just boring for me right now. If you take a full step back out and you put the images kind of on top of each other, what you'll notice is that that pullback move there was no different to the actual move that I was anticipating all the way back in March. Okay, so March down, back up, and all we had was August around this level here. We had obviously a slight push up there and then the drop down. Okay, so the moves have done exactly as you've expected them to do. Nothing's really changed. The opinion really hasn't changed. I still feel that we are corrective rather than impulsive. Now, clearly I've had a few people come to me and say, oh, what about plan B? And what about this analysis? And what about this indicator? I've joked this morning, guys, look, in terms of plan B, I've seen that he said, he's a little bit off and it's the first miss. He was calling 92k back in April. If that's not a big enough miss, then I don't know what is. The second thing is, this particular miss, I joked this morning in Discord that it's almost like leaving New York with the intention of getting to Sydney and actually landing the plane somewhere in Germany. It's not a little bit off. It's more than 40% off in terms of the current prediction. That's not really what I'm looking for in terms of analysis. If I'm looking at the TA, personally, I'm looking for a long-term buy and hold. I've mentioned this in my last 100 streams. Overall, what I'm actually looking for is now a monthly 4 and the monthly 4 ride up to the monthly 5 completion. Okay. Now, I would have liked to have taken the weekly, as I mentioned earlier. However, the actual, I suppose, price action when we were down at this level didn't give me enough confidence here. Okay. I didn't like the 5-wave pullback there. And therefore, by the time I actually had the confirmation I was looking for, we were already up around the 24th of August. Now, I could have taken this one, obviously, but keep in mind, I've said around the 22 to 19k, which is all the way down here. My trade would have been literally a buy at this kind of region here with a stop loss all the way down there to take something I knew was only going to come slightly beyond the old all-time high. When I called this in March, I was anticipating an 83 to 95k level, maybe with a little bit of retail hype. It would take us up just over the 100,000 mark. I thought Composite Man might have been very evil, taking it to 100,000 and then crashing it. But I think the way that I feel in recent price action, the only thing that's changed in my analysis from March is actually the fact that I feel we have still two options on the table. This could easily be the buyer's climax, followed by a UT, which takes us into a UTAD. Now, I kind of like that less at the moment, although it's still a viable option. The other option is that we come on down a little bit further. I think for me, the value area now is 42 to 35-ish. So we got this as a kind of region here. Again, something that we'll cover a little bit more in the next couple of weeks within Discord. And then the grand scheme of things is if I take all this back off and just give a little bit of an idea, then in essence, the last thing that I'm looking for, like I said, is the buy and hold strategy, monthly 4 to 5 on the way up. I don't think anything's changed for me personally in that grand scheme of things. And therefore, I'm still comfortable with the analysis that takes me all the way back to January, as I've just shown. the accumulation up to obviously value area, or just above value area, pull back to value area. We've actually repeated the process, and this has actually given us what I would regard as symmetry. So if we look at the move up, we start at this kind of level down here, and I've mentioned this a couple of times already. We then come up for an A, we have a B, okay, we have a C, D, right, and obviously up then E, and we drop. Right now, this is nothing to do with Elliott, this is just me talking symmetry. If we talk about the same kind of move in terms of where we were from this for me was the equivalent of the X. You can see this kind of dangling there. This for me was the X. Okay, now if we come up and we have the A, we have the B, C, this could be the D. Now this is why for me the UTAD could still be plausible. I just like it less in terms of where we currently are right now. So that's really the overview. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm seeing. Like I said, nothing really has changed. I don't want to, pick on other people. I don't really want to talk about, other people's analysis. But for me, nothing's changed in where we are. It kind of seems boring. It kind of seems slow. The pullback move, like I said, personally wasn't for me. If a few people wanted to take, I know there's a few people in the group that actually took it, fine, great, they made money. But for me, purely based on my experience and the longevity of this, been trading Bitcoin since 2011. I'm quite happy to sit on my hands, wait for the monthly pullback and then take this on. Now, just to finish with, the one other thing that I wanted to touch on is that a few people have come to me, like I said, with, plan B and different indicators, different analysis, different wave counts. I've had questions such as, why don't I use this as the move one and therefore, take this up? And the problem is if we take this as 0, this being the 1, this being the 2, it was quickly invalidated with this move here. So, I like what I like. I've been doing this a long time. I kind of feel comfortable with where we're at. Like I said, I'm just reiterating, nothing's changed going back as far as January for me. This was something I'm very comfortable with. I think you can trade intraday trades on Bitcoin and you can do this all day, every day. If that's what you're into, fine. Personally, it's just not for me. So I'm comfortable. I'm still comfortable. And then the last thing to finish with is this little indicator. I kind of find it fascinating because it's colorful, it's quite useful in terms of what people like to see, and when I say it's useful, it's useful because people like shiny stuff, in the grand scheme of things, all we're actually seeing is divergence. We've got, some kind of RSI or stochastic sitting there. You can see similarities in terms of this. I'm not quite sure the ins and outs of the indicator, but the one thing that I wanted to highlight is for a lot of people are using this as an indicator, you've got to zoom out. Okay. So just like I've said with the other analysis, if we zoom out on this as an indicator, we can clearly see a bearish divergence that is painting there. We had a false bar in our move, and it wasn't until the cross on the stochastic there that this was called. But ultimately, what you're seeing is then the drop, right? So, at one point, yes, bearish divergence is going to work, okay? So great, wonderful, brilliant. Now, let's take a couple of steps back, and we're going to look at the same thing and look at where we currently are. And I know I've mentioned this based on our stochastic indicator. We currently have a weekly overbought situation leading to a drop, right? Now, again, I've mentioned this again a million times in the last couple of streams. Now, the only thing that's actually been painted right now is we have another bearish divergence dot painted on the weekly. Now, you saw what just happened on the monthly the last time we saw this. I feel comfortable with my own analysis in the stochastic. Now you've got other people saying, a lot of people use this indicator, a lot of people are going to be reading into this, and all it's going to do is create that self-fulfilling prophecy where so many people using it, fear is going to set in. Some big YouTubers using this are going to turn around and say, well, this has just painted some divergence. And guess what? The drop's coming. So again, nothing really untoward, nothing different. Do I like this? It's nothing special, if I'm honest. Is it useful? If you want to use it. To me, it's too much information. It's kind of information overload. There might be strategies and techniques, but personally, I'm just not interested. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm going back to what I know. I like what I like. This has been, for me, nothing new, nothing interesting. and we are where we are. I still think this was creation a monthly 3, potentially UTAD, which would finish it off. Are we going to go to 100k in this run? I doubt it in terms of where we are right now. So sorry for blabbing on, but I hope this one helps some of you. And yeah, I'll be doing a new video again pretty soon. So enjoy the weekend. Thanks for watching all.